In this video, I'm going to show you how to create bar charts and column charts in Microsoft Excel so you can quickly visualize your data and make sense of what might otherwise be a big wall of numbers. Imagine you have a small bakery that sells all kinds of goodies, and you've been tracking your sales in a spreadsheet. You might have columns for product names, quantities sold, and the years in which those sales took place. Having rows and rows of information can be useful, but a chart can make patterns jump out immediately. That's exactly what we're going to do today, step by step. First, feel free to grab the Excel file I'm using by checking out the link in the description below. That way, you can follow along and practice on your own. Once you open the file, you'll see a table of data. Maybe it shows cookies or pastries along with how many were sold in different years. Let's say you have a column that lists the name of each product, like chocolate chip cookies, oatmeal raisin cookies, and so on. Then another column that shows the number sold in 2025, and maybe a final column for 2026. Just for the example, imagine we have a dozen or so products, and we want to translate all that information into a clear, easy-to-read visual. You can definitely stare at the numbers, but a chart is often more impactful and reveals trends at a glance. One of the fastest ways to create a basic column chart is to click anywhere inside your data. If you want to be specific, you can highlight all your rows and columns first. But if your data is arranged in a neat table, simply clicking inside it usually works. Once you've done that, look at the top of Excel where you see all the different tabs like Home, Insert, Page Layout, and so on. Click on Insert, and within this tab, there's usually a section labeled Charts. Depending on your version of Excel, you might see tiny icons for different chart types, such as column charts, bar charts, pie charts, and more. If you hover over the column chart icon, you'll notice that Excel usually calls it Insert Column or Bar Chart, or something along those lines. Click on that, and you'll see different variations appear in a drop-down menu. You might see options for a basic two-dimensional column chart, variations with multiple columns side by side, or a three-dimensional version. For now, let's pick a standard 2D column chart that has vertical bars. The moment you click on that option, Excel inserts a chart into your worksheet, showing each product on the horizontal axis and the values, like number of items sold, on the vertical axis. Congratulations! You now have a basic column chart. But maybe you decide a bar chart with horizontal bars would work better for your situation. A bar chart is basically the horizontal cousin of a column chart. If you have really long product names or a large number of categories, a bar chart can make the labels easier to read because they appear left to right, rather than all squished at an angle under the vertical columns. To change your chart from column to bar, click once on the chart to select it. You'll notice Excel might show you some new tabs up top, like Chart Design and Format. Click on Chart Design and look for an option that says something like Change Chart Type. A dialog box appears giving you a list of all the chart types Excel supports. Find the bar section, often it's near column, line, and pie, and pick the style you prefer. Hit OK, and now your data is displayed horizontally. At this point, you might be wondering which chart style is truly best. The short answer is that both bar and column charts essentially present the same type of information. However, if you have more categories than you can comfortably show across the width of the screen, or if those category names get cut off when you rotate them, go with a bar chart. If it's only a few categories with shorter names, a column chart works just fine. It really depends on your personal preference and what fits your data. As you experiment, you'll get a better sense of what's best for your specific needs. Let's take a closer look at tweaking a column chart, since that's often the most common way people represent data. Suppose you inserted a column chart, but it's not quite clear what the axis represents. For instance, your vertical axis might show a series of numbers, but there's no label explaining what those numbers are. To fix that, you can add an axis title. Start by clicking on your chart so that Excel knows you're working with it. Then make sure you're in the Chart Design tab. You might see a button that says Add Chart Element. Click on it, and you'll find a list of things you can add or remove, such as axes, axis titles, chart title, data labels, and more. Hover your mouse over axis titles and you'll see options to add titles to the primary horizontal axis or the primary vertical axis. Let's say we want to label the vertical axis number of cookies sold. We click on Primary Vertical. Now a default text box appears along that axis. Double-click in that text box and type number of cookies sold, so that anyone looking at the chart will instantly know what those numbers mean. You might also notice a chart title automatically appears. It might say Chart Title by default. If you want it to match a particular cell in your workbook, say you typed Cookie Sales 2025-2026 in cell A1, you can link the chart title to that cell so that if the text in A1 changes, the title changes too. To do that, click on the title in the chart, then move your mouse up to the formula bar, the same place you type in formulas for cells. Type an equals sign, then click on the cell you want to reference and hit Enter. Excel will automatically pull in the text from that cell. Now, if you revise the cell to say, Cookie Sales for the Grand Opening, the chart title will reflect those changes automatically. And if you decide you want to lock that cell reference so that it doesn't shift if you move things around, you can make it an absolute reference by including a $sign in front of the column letter and the row number. In other words, type a $sign before the letter and also before the number, so that Excel treats it as a fixed reference. For example, if the cell was A1, you could type a $sign, then the letter, then another $sign before the number. That ensures the reference never shifts, no matter how you move or copy your formula. Back to charts. Let's say you'd rather not add each individual chart element by hand. Excel offers what it calls quick layouts. With your chart selected, look again at the Chart Design tab at the top. There's a button that says Quick Layout. Clicking it shows a gallery of preset arrangements. Each layout may display axis titles, data labels, and legends in different spots. If you hover over each option, Excel gives you a real-time preview of what it will look like. That way, you can quickly try different layouts until you find one that fits your data best, all without manually adding or removing each piece. Another thing you might do is change the overall color scheme or style. Also in the Chart Design tab, you'll find sections for colors and styles. Maybe you want a monochromatic look or something that matches your branding. Hover over each thumbnail in the Style Gallery, and Excel will preview it on your chart. You might see shadows behind your columns, gradient fills, or different background colors. Choose the one you like best, and just like that, you've customized your chart. If you have a theme in mind, like you want to match your company's signature color, you can manually change the fill for each column. For example, if you really want your best-selling cookie to have a specific shade of brown that reminds people of gooey chocolate chips, just click on that column once to select all columns in that series, or click again to select an individual bar if you want to isolate just one. Then go to Format on the top ribbon, look for Shape Fill, and pick the color you like. You can do the same thing by right-clicking on a bar and choosing Format Data Point. That brings up a pane on the right side of Excel where you can tinker with fill, border, and even add effects like a shadow or a glow. Now, imagine you have 2 years of data, 2025 and 2026. You'd like to show both of these years side by side in one chart. If your data is arranged with product names in the first column, 2025's numbers in the second, and 2026's numbers in the third, you can highlight all of it, or just click anywhere in the table if your data is neatly formatted, and insert a chart using the same approach. If you press the shortcut on Windows, which is Alt plus F1, Excel immediately inserts a basic 2D column chart on the same worksheet. Now you see the product names along the horizontal axis, and each one shows 2 columns, one for 2025 and one for 2026. If you find that Excel reversed them or arranged them in a way you don't like, maybe it put the cookie types in the legend and the years along the bottom, there's a handy button on the Chart Design tab labeled Switch Row Column. That feature flips how Excel interprets your data, letting you decide whether you want to group by cookie type or by year. Try clicking it to see which grouping makes more sense visually. Some folks prefer to see each cookie type with 2 bars, one for each year, grouped together, while others might want a big chunk of 2025 next to a big chunk of 2026, with all the cookies listed in the legend. It's purely personal preference, so see which layout makes the most sense for your situation. Once your columns for multiple years are on the chart, you might want to adjust the spacing or overlap. Let's say you notice the columns are too far apart, or maybe they're practically on top of each other. You can double-click on one of the columns to open the Format Data Series pane. In there, look for something called Series Overlap and Gap Width. Sliding these controls changes how tightly packed the columns are. Setting a higher overlap means the columns are closer or even on top of each other, while setting a lower overlap leaves more space. Gap width influences the spacing between groups of columns. If you have multiple years, you'll see how that changes the visual separation from one group to the next. Tweak these settings until you find a layout that's both readable and pleasing to the eye. There may be times when a standard grouped column chart isn't quite what you need. If you're trying to compare not only how 2 years add up, but also the contribution each product makes within that total, you might prefer a stacked column. In Excel, you can change your chart type easily by clicking on the chart, going up to the Chart Design tab, and choosing Change Chart Type. Under Column, you'll see an option for Stacked Column. Pick that, click OK, and Excel will merge the columns on top of each other, color-coded by year or whatever series you have. This makes it easy to see how the total for each product is composed of the separate parts. If the stacked portion for 2026 is bigger than the one for 2025, you instantly see that difference. But you can also see how overall totals stack up across different categories. Meanwhile, let's say you prefer a bar chart with multiple series. The process is almost the same, except you'd choose a bar chart type and you'd end up with multiple horizontal bars for each category. You can group them or stack them just like the column versions, but oriented horizontally. That's an especially good idea if you have a long list of products or if your product names take up a lot of space. You can quickly see how many items sold for each year, and your labels remain legible because they run left to right instead of getting squished below vertical bars. While we're here, let me point out a few other minor but useful details. If you ever decide you don't like the chart you created, simply click on its border to select the entire chart object and press the Delete key on your keyboard. This removes the chart, but it won't harm your data. You can always create a new one if you change your mind later. Also, if you want to move the chart around on your worksheet, just click and drag it to a different spot, or resize it by grabbing one of the handles around its edges. You can also cut and paste the chart into another worksheet or another program like PowerPoint or Word. When you're confident that your bar or column chart clearly communicates what you want people to see, don't forget you can make final touches like adding data labels if you'd like numbers to appear directly on each bar. Under the Chart Design tab, you might see an Add Chart Element button. Look for the Data Labels option. This places numerical values on each bar or column, so viewers don't have to look back and forth between the chart and the axis. Sometimes that makes your chart clearer. Other times, it clutters things up if you have too many categories. Feel free to experiment. By the way, if you suspect your audience wants the chart in a separate sheet to really get a big picture, you can move the chart to its own worksheet. To do that, with the chart selected, check out the Chart Design tab for an option called Move Chart. That typically allows you to place it in a new worksheet just for the chart or embed it in another existing sheet. This can be especially handy for printing or presenting your data. And now, YouTube thinks this next video will make you an Excel wizard. Watch it or stay stuck in spreadsheet limbo forever. No pressure, right? See you there!